Well, now we're going to turn to the Supreme Showdown. President Biden today laying out his proposal to reform the nation's highest court. First, he wants an enforceable code of ethics for the justices, along with term limits and a constitutional amendment that would scale back the court's recent ruling on presidential immunity from criminal prosecution. Now, President Biden just took the stage at an event in Austin, Texas. This was to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. He is expected and actually is talking right now about his Supreme Court proposals, making the case for the first time on camera on why he thinks these specific changes are needed. We will monitor his speech and we'll have it covered on World News Tonight with David Muir at 6:30 this evening. But right now, here to react tonight live with us is Russ Gugino and Jack O'Donnell, perspectives from both sides of the ideological spectrum joining me now. I appreciate both of you being here. And Russ, I want to start with you. We know the Supreme Court isn't very popular these days, right? I want to show our viewers here a couple of recent polls, YouGov and Fox News, if we can take that. Both of them showing approval ratings below 40%. In the Fox survey, 60% of registered voters disapprove of the court. Russ, what is your reaction to what the president has proposed there, and especially that enforceable code of ethics? It seems ethics rules apply to everybody else in government. Why not the court?
Well, the proposals that were made today by President Biden are not new. In fact, they go back to 1983 when a number of Democrats wanted to do exactly the same thing. And the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee called these kinds of proposals bonehead ideas. And by the way, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in 1983 was Joe Biden. So just think about what the motive is for something like this.
Jack, let me get your overall reaction as well, and also specifically ask you about the term limits proposal as the president is laying it out right now. Again, we'll show our viewers, this is a different poll, this one from Newsweek about a month ago, and in this one, 58% of the people who were polled, if we can put that up on the screen, said they support term limits, just 13% opposed. Newsweek noting that even a majority of Trump 2020 voters said in this poll that they support term limits, only 20% of them opposed. So Jack, how would you respond to what Russ said there, and what about this idea of term limits, which does seem a little more controversial perhaps than the enforceable code of ethics?
Well, term limits are difficult, right? And I do think a lot of people support them for Congress, too. And we don't see Congress moving on either of these soon. But the idea that the Supreme Court shouldn't be subject to strong and enforceable ethics laws is laughable. Whatever you think about the other proposals, and I can see these are going to be hard to pass, I think it's an important debate. I think it's very clear, you showed the polling, it's very clear that voters, that Americans have lost faith in the court. They feel like it's become very partisan. I think it's incumbent on Democrats who support things like these ethics rules to support them, even if the majority of the court changes. But I think a basic standard here is ethics laws, and it's hard to believe that everyone can't get behind that.
So Russ, and you are a conservative. We have a 6-3 conservative majority now on the court. I know it's important to everyone that the court have legitimacy, right? And that we improve those approval ratings for the court, absent legislation, which, as Jack just said, is highly improbable that anything's going to get through the House and the Senate and be signed by a president now or any time in the future. But what should the court be doing to improve its reputation?
Well, first of all, the court isn't created to be popular. The court is supposed to be calling balls and strikes. And we all know that the umpire is probably one of the most unpopular people on the field when we play a baseball game. But they do have a role to play. But to have the Congress of the United States regulate the ethics of justices is sort of like Madonna campaigning for chastity. I mean, the Congress of the United States has incredible ethical problems. And by the way, so does Joe Biden. And to have them regulate the court is just another political ploy.
Before I move on to Jack, just real quick to follow up on that, should they have then their own enforceable code of ethics and not this, code of ethics that if they violate it, there are no consequences? To you, Russ.
Well, I think they do have a code of ethics. I think that some people are questioning it, But nobody is questioning whether or not a justice is accepting money for a decision or an action, an official action. Like, for example, Bob Menendez, it just got convicted in the Senate for accepting gold ingots, for goodness sakes, from the country of Egypt. Nobody is even suggesting that a justice does that. So ethics standards that exist today, I think surely they could be modified, but it doesn't show a great flaw in the court.
Jack, finally, let me ask you about point 3 on that list here, which is putting term limits on the justices. A lot of people will look at that and say, we haven't changed the makeup of the court, 9 members or lifetime appointments, in many, many decades. Are the politics surrounding that just too difficult to swallow?
Absolutely. I think the politics of this are tough. That's the whole point, is to get your folks in, get them in as young as you can, and keep them there for as long as you can. That's why maybe if the standard was, rather than a term limit, an age, a retirement age, we have that in New York State, where Supreme Court judges at a certain age are required by the Constitution to retire. There are ways to do this, but the idea that this is just balls and strikes, the point is you have to trust the person doing it and not have them be taking trips and doing other things. I love the point you made. I mean, John Roberts could do this tomorrow and put in enforceable rules, ethic rules, and I think most Americans expect that.
Jack O'Donnell and Russ Gugino, great to get both of your perspectives. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.